Most men never fully lose their belly fat, and the ones that do often gain it back. So you probably know that you can lose a lot of weight, yet still have stubborn belly fat. Now I'm going to show you the actual honest timeline to lose your belly fat. I will also debunk common belly fat myths and tell you the simple steps you need to take to lose your belly fat. My name's Adam, I'm a performance nutritionist, and I've helped dozens of men lose their belly fat and keep it off. And this is the honest advice I wish I had when I weighed 275 pounds and had a 42-inch waist. If you clicked on this, you want the answer, so here it is. From around 25% body fat down to 12 to 15% body fat, that noticeably different look where your stomach is flat, that's around 5 to 9 months for most men at a sustainable pace. Now, if you throw in some life obstacles, it could take a lot longer. And yes, that's likely longer than you wanted to hear. It's also why so men quit before they get there. They went in expecting a timeline and got a completely different one. When the reality doesn't match the expectation, most men don't adjust the expectation. They just quit. Let's say I weighed 250 pounds and was 25% body fat and wanted to get to 15%. I was okay to go aggressive, to lose around 1% of my body weight per week, and I had a completely clear runway. Again, this is perfect on paper. I could do this in roughly 12 weeks, but now let's be realistic and factor in life. Let's say around 5 months, because most men drastically underestimate their body fat levels. And obviously this is going to give you a good calculation. This is going to give you a good starting point, but generally to do with a device or just lack of clarity. You can do what I just did for free using my fat loss calculator below. It takes less than 60 seconds. And now you have a good estimate of how long it takes. The rest of this video is about why it plays out that way and what actually determines how long it takes for you specifically. Now, the journey doesn't feel the same from beginning to end. Even though it sounds made up, it does have phases. And knowing which one you're in right now changes how you respond to what you're seeing. The first phase is roughly the first 4 to 8 weeks. This is the easiest part. You're making changes that haven't been made before, and your body's responding pretty fast. You're starting to see your clothes fit differently. Your face feels like it's leaning out, and you finally feel like it's happening. But your lower belly is probably still looking soft. For most men, this goes last, but everything else is telling you that it's working. Then the middle phase arrives. This is where most men just fall apart. The quick wins are gone and your body is adjusted. Progress slows down to something that barely feels like progress at all. The scale starts doing strange things. Flat for a week, down 2 pounds, up 1, flat again. And this specific feeling where you're working hard and seeing nothing really causes most men to make the decisions that set them back months. The final phase is the last stretch. Here you have the smallest margin for error and annoyingly the highest level of hunger. The visible progress that kept you going on month 2 has faded. This is where patience becomes the actual skill, not discipline or motivation. Just the ability to stay consistent when there's no obvious immediate reward for doing so. I will come back to each phase and let you know what to do, but first I want to tell you the thing that's wrecking most people's progress before they even get going. You've been on a plan for weeks, your training is going well and you feel better. Someone at work even mentioned it, and it takes a lot for someone to mention it. And then you step on a scale and it hasn't moved. Everything you felt good about 5 minutes ago suddenly feels irrelevant. Of course, that feeling is real, but what's causing it isn't necessarily the fat still being there. It's the instrument you're using to measure. Your scale weight can shift several pounds in a single day. This is not from fat or from muscle, but from water, food volume in your gut, glycogen, a salty meal, or even a poor night's sleep. And judging fat loss by a single morning weigh is like judging the season by one day's weather. I mean, you could probably do that in London, but most of the time, no. This number also means almost nothing without the context across time. One of my clients, Hossam, came to me wanting to hit 180 pounds. That was his number based on his height, what he Googled, his history, and what he felt was right. The scale did what the scale does. Dropped some weeks, stayed flat others, went up occasionally for no obvious reason. But his waist measurements were consistently dropping. Every 2 weeks, the tape measure told the full story, a completely different one. At 180 pounds, he didn't want to stop. He had 33 pounds of momentum behind him and wanted to see how far he could go. We kept going until he got to 163 pounds, 20 pounds past the goal we'd set before. And the moment it clicked for him wasn't the number. It was his old pair of jeans. They just didn't fit anymore. In fact, as you can see by this picture, they drowned him. 3 sizes down, yet the scale had been noisy the entire journey. The jeans told the truth. I would weigh in daily and take your weekly average. I would do this forever if you can. Then measure your waist every 2 weeks at the same time and the same place. And you can also take, I also recommend this, front, back and side photos every 2 weeks. These are all real data points. You then ideally want at least one of those moving in the right direction across a 14-day window to know something is working. And here's something that catches most men off guard. You've been doing everything right for months. You've lost the weight, and then progress just slows down. It doesn't stop, it just slows a bit. But for some reason, this feels like the end of the road and your body is just fighting back. It hasn't. It's just doing what it evolved to do. As you lose weight, your body adjusts. Your resting metabolism drops slightly. People massively overestimate this. You tend to move a bit less without realizing it. Hunger nudges up, way more actually than you'd like it to. So now you're in the same deficit that was producing results in month 2, but it's producing smaller results by month 4. And you may be doing nothing wrong, but it's just that your body has adapted to the new normal. Now you've probably heard this framed as metabolic damage and been sold as metabolic reset or some crazy name off the back of it. Ignore all that garbage. Sure, the adaptation is real, but it's modest. There's no protocol needed to fix it. The actual fix is this. As you get leaner, your tracking needs to be sharper and not looser. Most people who think they've hit a genuine plateau are just tracking less carefully than they were 3 months ago. I get it. Sometimes it gets boring. Sometimes you have predictable meals and you just start saying, okay, but I've weighed this before, I've tracked this before. And then you just start estimating more. Maybe some of the snaps have creeped back in and your weekends got slightly looser each time. Now, before assuming your body is the problem, make sure you're actually running the plan you think you're running. Tighten the tracking for at least 2 weeks, 7 days a week. 9 times out of 10, that will move the needle again. The feeling in the middle of the cut when you're working hard, the middle phase. Phase 2, if you want to call it that. But yet you're seeing nothing. This is the most dangerous moment of the whole process because the instinct it creates is exactly the wrong one. So your scale stalls for a week or 2, and instead of checking your waist or the photos or the clothes, how they fit, you make a decision. Nothing is working. So calories get cut harder and cardio gets added. And if you're doing both at once, that's a lot. The side effects show up. Sleep gets worse, hunger becomes constant, and your performance in the gym starts to dip. And I've been through this myself more than once. The first time I seriously tried to lose fat, I went as hard as I could, minimal food and maximum cardio with no flexibility anywhere. 0 meals out, 0 ultra-processed foods. I lost 90 pounds. I didn't look the way I wanted to look. I lost too much muscle along the way and had no energy left to do anything about it. Then I just stopped. And within roughly the same amount of time, just a bit longer, I regained 80 pounds. You struggle to create that new normal and you just end the diet. But the second time I did this properly, cooking most of my meals. Well, I was cooking my meals before, but you can barely call them meals. I was getting protein at every meal, eating fiber and tracking consistently. I wasn't just eating less. People started noticing before I did. And at some point, the scale stopped being what I paid attention to. I still weighed in, but I was going on how I felt, how I looked, and how my training was going. I didn't declare a finish line. I just kept going because it was working. And nothing about me, well, about the process, was miserable. This is the version that stuck. The difference wasn't motivation, it was a method. I didn't change anything based on less than 14 days of data. Not a week, and definitely not a single bad weigh-in. For 14 days, watch the scale. Watch the average on the scale. Watch your waist and your photos together. Look at all three of them. Nothing in isolation. If all three of them show nothing after everything is generally dialed in, make one adjustment. Either drop calories by 5% or add in some cardio if your steps are maxed out. You probably fell for this at some point. You look down at your midsection and you think, if I could just target this specific area directly, we'd be done. So the ab work goes up with more crunches, more leg raises. You follow some workout on YouTube. It's a completely reasonable instinct, and it doesn't work. One of my clients, Steve, was training his abs every single day. Sets of crunches, leg raises, and cable crunches. He was convinced that he had hammered, well, if he had hammered the midsection enough, the fat would eventually just burn off from there. But when your body stores fat for energy, it draws from everywhere, not from the muscles you happen to train that training session. The research on spot reduction is as settled as anything gets. The results, well, the effects even, are minor. What ab training does is develop the muscle underneath, which is worth doing, of course. But whether you see the muscle is entirely determined on how much fat sits over it. I had Steve train his core like he trained everything else. A few progressive sets, part of a full program. Then would put his energy that he was spending on his daily ab sessions into the things that actually shifted the fat, his deficit, his protein, his daily movement. And his waist started responding in a way that it hadn't during a year of daily ab work. And you want to train your abs like every other muscle, build them over time, but stop treating them like your fat loss strategy. They are built in the gym and revealed in the kitchen. Okay, so you've probably heard this one multiple times. You might even do it. Train on an empty stomach. No carbohydrates available. Body has to burn fat. Sure, it sounds logical. A lot of people then go to bed hungry specifically to wake up and train in this state. I did it for a while. Got up early, trained, fasted, convinced I was getting some sort of edge off this, but I wasn't. During a fasted session, yes, fat oxidation does go up. This is the rate you burn fat for fuel. That is legit. But the problem is what happens during 1 hour doesn't determine your body composition. Your total energy balance across days and weeks does. Now the research shows that when calories are matched, fasted cardio and fed cardio produce essentially the same fat loss results over time. So if you genuinely prefer training fasted, you feel good, you perform well, and it fits your morning, keep doing it. But if you're forcing yourself out of bed at 5 a.m., skipping breakfast and grinding through something because you hate it and you think it burns more fat, you're just suffering for no additional return, and it makes the process a lot harder to stick with. So I dropped the fasted sessions and started training when it suited my day. Turns out that's the morning after a shake. The sessions got better because I wasn't running on empty. Train when you train well, and your deficit handles the rest. And there's a version of fat loss which feels almost too simple to be real. And because it doesn't feel like exercise, most men completely dismiss it. Think about the difference between a day when you're moving consistently, walking between meetings, and you're on your feet more. Now a day where you're sitting at a desk from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. You might have done the same gym session both days, but your total energy expenditure on those days are completely different. That's a gap that's known as NEAT, the energy you burn through all movement outside structured exercise. For most people, it accounts for more daily energy burn than the gym session itself. And when you get into a calorie deficit, the body does reduce this output. You sit more, you fidget less, and now you take the escalator without thinking about it. The deficit you created starts shrinking without you realizing it. And people hate this and sometimes don't believe me, that I got to 6% body fat from 20% without a single traditional cardio session. There's no treadmill, there was no bike, and there was definitely no HIIT. I was lifting, I was in a deficit, and I focused on walking and staying active throughout the day. That was it. And that's not an argument against cardio. Cardio is useful, cardio is helpful, but for most, well, I'd say a lot of men, it's the most expensive lever in terms of recovery. A hard cardio session on top of a deficit, on top of weight training, stacks demands that may affect your sleep, your hunger, and your performance. Walking costs almost nothing to recover from, and it can actually improve recovery and aid sleep. It contributes more to the deficit than most people give it credit for. Set a step target that's realistic for you, like roughly 7 to 10,000 a day, depending on literally your life, your schedule. Protect it in the same way you protect your training days. It sounds too simple, but it works. I found that everyone wants some actionable advice from a video like this, so here's what moves the needle. Most men go into a fat loss phase and immediately obsess over their diet, what to eat, when to eat, which foods to cut. And of course, diet matters a lot. But if there's one thing I'd put above everything else, and I assume a lot of you do this anyway, is lift weights progressively throughout the entire process. Progressive lifting is what sends a signal to your body to hold on to muscle while you're in a deficit. And the deficit removes the fat. Without it, the weight you lose will include a significant amount of muscle. And that changes how you look, how you feel, and how your body's able to handle food moving forward. Some men actually build muscle during a cut. A lot of men I work with. That's not just because I work with them, it's because there are a lot of factors that affect that. But even if you just preserve what you have, that's the difference between getting leaner and getting smaller. And that's also the difference between, in my view, being able to maintain it or not. When energy drops and motivation dips, this is the last thing to sacrifice, not the first. And protein stays high, around 0.7 to 0.8 grams per pound of your body weight, and spread that across, in my views, 3 to 4 meals to support your appetite. And it supports the lifts. Protein handles hunger like better than anything else and makes the whole process more sustainable. It's a second priority though, not first. But then soon after protein, I would say fiber. Keep that to at least like 30 to 40 grams a day if you actually want to be full. And like I said, steps 7 to 10,000 a day, more if you can. And sleep, this is worth mentioning, of course, 7 to 9 hours where possible. Poor sleep drives up hunger, increases cravings, and makes every part a lot harder than it needs to be. This is not optional if you want the process to feel manageable. Now you need to plan for the weekend. 5 dialed in weekdays followed by 2 improvised ones can quietly put you in a calorie surplus for the week without you even feeling like you did anything wrong. That doesn't mean an overly restricted weekend, just plan for it in advance. And when a scale stalls, tighten the tracking before you change anything else. Your accuracy degrades over time. Before assuming the plan just isn't working, make sure you're actually running the plan you think you're running. And I probably should have put this first before I spoke about anything else, but it's knowing your why and not just knowing it, coming back to it. Just not that I want to look better. That just won't carry you through a 2-week scale stall. The men who follow this through all the way, they have a good reason that goes deeper than aesthetics. They don't want to feel old before they are. They want more energy for their kids. They don't want to have the same conversation with their doctor their father had. Whatever yours is, write it down. And when the process gets slow and the temptation is to blow it up and start something extreme again, that reason is a thing you keep coming back to that helps you make the right call. So the timeline is around 5 to 9 months, but I would allow even longer. And now you know exactly why. So if you enjoyed this video, subscribe and watch this video next. I dive deep into why most people end up regaining their belly fat. I'll see you there.